So, a couple months ago, I created this trick, which is an inward front flip in, inward 540 dive roll out, and I thought it might be fun to explain exactly how I came up with the idea for it and trained myself to do it. Our story begins in the ancient days of 2013. I was training at Woodward West, and I thought of trying to roll out of an inward front 1 and 3. Unfortunately, that's not how physics works, but this did give me a different idea. I realized if I under-rotated slightly and did an inward 180 dive roll, inertia should work with me instead of against me, and I could keep moving instead of just grinding to a violent halt on my neck. It was a pretty scary trick to try, but once I got over the whole being completely blind while over-rotating a front flip that travels backward and throwing my face at the ground thing, it actually worked really well. A few years later, I was doing a Thomas, which is 1.5 backflips with 1.5 twists into a dive roll, and I was thinking about how convenient this trick was because the twisting lets you see the ground the entire time, and that makes everything feel way more approachable. That got me thinking, because most tricks that can be done backwards can also be done forwards, so maybe if I added a front full to my inward trick, I'd be able to see the ground there too. The idea made sense. It would just be an inverse equivalent of a Thomas. 1.5 flips with 1.5 twists, just going the other direction. Needless to say, I went and noodled around with it till it worked, and the reverse Thomas wound up becoming one of the tricks I'm most proud of. Now, a few months ago, I was laying in bed thinking about tricks, as I often do, and I had this sudden idea. What if I took the same exact amount of flip and twist as the reverse Thomas, but redistributed it so it was 1.5 front flips into a 1.5 twisting inward dive roll? The next day, I headed to the gym and built myself a much heftier ramp out of mats, and then began warming up by just getting reacquainted with inward 540 dive rolls. I hadn't done any of these in at least a year, so they were not my finest work, but I just wanted to feel out a couple before I started adding flips to them. After that, I did a single inward front flip that skipped my feet just to remember that feeling as well. Then I kinda just decided to try the trick and see what would happen, and to my relief, it went way better than expected. I felt really confident after this, so I tried again with a little more power, and wound up suitcasing while almost kneeing myself in the mouth. Yeah, it turns out power was not the solution here. So I tried another one to reset things, and even though I kicked out early and saw absolutely nothing, it still felt really close, so I decided to call it a day while I still had teeth. It was a couple weeks before I got to try again, but this time I was able to start the session already knowing the trick was possible and at least kinda what to expect, so that made everything way easier. My first attempt felt absolutely great, and even though the mat shifted under me when I tried to stand up, the timing felt way better than it had in the previous session. That said, the next one was just a little bit splatty. This was a good reminder that to roll properly, I'd need to catch at a more inverted angle, which unfortunately also meant a scarier and more vulnerable angle. I started focusing on that, but as a result, I stopped traveling far enough backwards, began to overthink things, and came dangerously close to hyperextending my knee. And then things got worse. See, when I'm trying to train for a new scary trick, especially one that, as far as I know, has never even been done before, I try to focus and stay in the zone. You know what makes that really hard to do? This. I was already so far into my head with this trick, and when all the shrieking started, I realized it was probably best just to call it a day before I got injured for no reason, so I quit while I still had knee ligaments and decided to resume another day under more tranquil circumstances. Well, the next day didn't happen for about 3 weeks, so when I started training, I quickly ran through the individual components, then wasted absolutely no time trying to put them together. By this point, I had tried the trick enough times to feel fairly comfortable, so I focused on being patient and trying to kick out slightly later than I had been before, which would make the twisting easier to do and let me spot the mat down my body, which, in turn, made the trick easier to approach mentally. I blamed this one on my shoelaces and my shirt, so after a quick outfit adjustment, things started to come together quite nicely. I felt increasingly confident and decided to do one more good one before removing the pit pillow, and it's a good thing I did, because my confidence got the better of me, I flipped way too hard, and wound up suitcasing onto my neck. Luckily, this didn't hurt, and I was actually extremely grateful to crash like this, because now I knew exactly what it felt like to do too much and too little, which meant I had a much more clear idea of where the Goldilocks zone would be. I immediately decided to remove the pit pillow and chase my goal of doing it to more solid mats, and while the first few were iffy, they also didn't hurt. That said, I'd already been training for like 2.5 hours at this point, so my neck muscles were tired, my body was fatigued, and I decided to take a minute to stop, visualize what I needed to do, what it would feel like, what I would see, how it should look, and then I just got on the trampoline and did what I'd been imagining. That was it. So there you have it. Even though this trick was pretty scary to approach, I just decided to stay patient and train as responsibly as possible. I tend to find that slow and steady wins the race when it comes to tricks like this, especially when you're 37, and I hope that getting a little bit of insight into my training process was helpful. If you enjoyed this and you want more videos like this, please leave a comment below, and also please check out my 1-hour trick challenge series because it's pretty similar to this. I've left a link to the playlist right there. I hope you enjoy the videos, and until next time, happy training.